So Canelo Alvarez defeats Jermell Charlo, and I'm quite proud of my prediction for this fight because I called it pretty much exactly how it played out. In my prediction video, I said that Jermell Charlo would fight this fight on the defensive. He would fight to survive, and his goal after a couple rounds would be to survive the entire fight without getting knocked out. He didn't care about winning after a certain point, and he would basically pull a Callum Smith, and that's exactly what he did. I'd say the only aspect of this fight I got wrong is it was a little bit wider than I predicted. I thought it'd be a 9-3, 10-2, 117, 111, 118 to 110 type of fight. It was more of a 10-2, 11-1 type of fight for Canelo, plus he had the knockdown on Jermell as well. So it was a little bit of an easier fight for Canelo than I predicted, but the way the fight played out, I almost got to a T. I also didn't predict Canelo to drop Charlo. I didn't think Charlo would actually get dropped in this fight, but I was wrong. He did drop Charlo in this fight. But the way it played out was so close to how I expected it to play out. Charlo on the defensive, Canelo throwing wide hooks, pushing him against the ropes, cornering him, and outworking him. Charlo fought scared. He fought tentatively. He was obviously discouraged of Canelo's power, which I expected to happen. And Canelo won this fight very comfortably. It's actually pretty interesting because when Charlo did land clean, you could tell Canelo actually respected Jermell Charlo's power to some extent. Not as much as he respected Triple G's, but you can tell that when Charlo did land some nice shots in this fight, they didn't hurt Canelo, but Canelo did feel them. They weren't feather-fisted, and I give Charlo some credit for being able to prove that he is a legit puncher and being able to somewhat carry his power up to 168. But I knew that he was biting off way more than he could chew with Canelo Alvarez. This was a very easy win for Canelo. Pretty easy, man. I mean, John Ryder definitely gave Canelo a tougher fight. I think anyone with a brain can see that. Canelo really had to work for that John Ryder win. It was a messy fight. It was a bloody fight. He got hit for a lot of shots on the inside. And what's interesting is I said that Jermell Charlo's best possible way of winning this fight would be to take Canelo on the inside, not to fight him on the outside, not to fight him on the back foot. And most of this fight was Charlo on the back foot. And because of that, Canelo was cornering him on the ropes, pounding to the body, and outworking him. Charlo really did not offer too much in return for Canelo. He was not throwing that many punches. He was discouraged of the power very noticeably. And Canelo Alvarez got the very dominant win. There's not much more to say. I mean, a lot of people are a little disappointed in Canelo for not being able to stop Charlo. But honestly, I'm not that disappointed in that aspect. I predicted this fight to go to full 12 rounds because I knew after a certain period Charlo would just fight on the defensive and his goal would be to survive. And that's exactly what happened. After, say, the second or third round, Charlo fought completely on the defensive. On occasion, he would let his hands go, but overall, Canelo Alvarez was very dominant. He won this fight very comfortably. Charlo really did not offer much in return. It was one of Canelo's actually easiest wins he's had in a very long time, to be honest. I mean, if you look at Canelo's last few fights, you got the John Ryder fight, you got the Triple G third fight, and Triple G won a lot of those rounds, a lot more rounds than people want to admit. And Canelo did not look very good in that fight. I think people need to realize that even a washed-up Triple G is a good fighter, and the 40-year-old Triple G would have beaten a prime Jermell Charlo moving up to 160 still. I think that's a very clear fact in my opinion. So he had that fight with Triple G, and he had the Dimitri Bivol fight, and before that he fought Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders. All of those fights were tougher than this one. I think you can argue that this fight was about as difficult as the Callum Smith fight. Very similar. And I do give Jermell some credit in hindsight because this might sound ironic, but he gave Canelo Alvarez an equally tough fight as Callum Smith. The same Callum Smith that's about to fight Artur Beterbiev at 175. So I guess Jermell Charlo getting absolutely dominated shouldn't be that big of a shocker. I mean, I was very close to calling this one to a T. I thought it would be like slightly tougher. I thought it would be more of a 9-3 type of fight, maybe 10-2. But Canelo really just dog-walked him. He was comfortable the entire night. Jermell never made Canelo Alvarez have to really dig in this fight. The only time Canelo was digging was when he was trying to get Charlo out of there. But he wasn't actually digging to get the victory. He was comfortable the entire time out. He was in complete control. And he won this fight very clearly. I believe I gave Jermell 2 rounds in this fight. And even those rounds were kind of competitive. I mean, the most you could give Charlo is probably 2 rounds. I can't really see him getting 3, to be honest. Canelo did what he had to do in there. He basically had a very similar game plan as he did when he fought Callum Smith. It was a very similar fight to the Callum Smith Callum Smith won. Very similar outcome, very similar pacing, and basically the same game plan. Charlo, his jab was relatively non-existent. Canelo took the jab away. He went to the body a lot. He hurt Charlo in that 7th round and put him down. And Charlo, I do believe it was a knockdown where Charlo didn't have to go down, but he knew if he stayed up and Canelo landed one more big shot, it could have been over for him. So I actually think he had a very smart idea to take a knee in that 7th round. And I believe if more fighters did that when they were hurt, a lot less fighters would be getting stopped nowadays. And a lot less fighters would be losing fights by TKO when they're winning prior. You know, if you look at Mickey Bay versus John Molina, my good friend Mickey Bay, right? In that 10th round, if he took a knee when he was hurt, it could have been a very different fight. So yes, Charlo made the right decision by taking that knee in the 7th round. It really wasn't that important, the knockdown, because it was such a wide win for Canelo, but I thought it was interesting to bring up, and it was an interesting element to the fight, because I believe Jermell and Jermall as well have never been dropped in their careers. So him dropping Jermell was kind of interesting because Jermell's never been down, but Jermell has a really good chin. It makes sense that he went the full 12. That was my prediction. And I want to say straight up that it should have been Jermall in there and not Jermell. I think we all know this. Even with the layoff, it should have been Jermall. That's the guy that should be fighting at this weight class, not Jermell Charlo moving up 2 weights. And I believe the reason, I think we all know the reason that it was Jermell, is because Jermall cannot get his stuff together. He cannot focus. He cannot concentrate. He's been relatively undisciplined from what we know of, and he's been very inactive, obviously, and things outside of the ring have been affecting him, but this should have been Jermall Charlo's time to fight Canelo. That's a fight we've all been wanting to see for a very long time, and that's the fight we should have gotten last night. But, of course, there were a lot of issues with Jermall, and Jermell had to step up, and unfortunately for him, he did take a big defeat. Yes, he made a really good payday, and yes, he really didn't have too much to lose in this fight. He was the underdog. He's a smaller guy. It was pretty much inevitable that he was going to lose this fight. I made a video saying how Jermell beats Canelo, but I did not actually believe it. I hope you guys know that. That's why I made a prediction video stating that Canelo was going to beat Charlo by a wide decision. It should have been Jermall last night. And another thing I want to bring up is Terence Crawford. I love Terence Crawford. He's probably my favorite fighter in the sport now since Triple G's basically done. That fight would be a very dumb decision for Terence Crawford. Yes, he would get a big payday. Yes, he would make the most money he's made in his career. And also, yes, he would have potential to end his career as an all-time great, like a top 10 fighter ever, if he moves up and defeats Canelo Alvarez. But that's not going to happen. He would not defeat Canelo. And the thing is, I think the difference between this fight and the Charlo fight, Crawford versus Canelo, is I think Crawford would actually come to win. And because of that, I think he'd probably get knocked out in like the 9th or 10th round. It'd be a fight that would be dead even probably on the cards. Maybe even Crawford would be slightly up. But Canelo, I feel, would chin him. He's too big. He's too strong. Crawford is a strong guy, but he's way too big. He hits way too hard. I mean, he would be moving up 3 weights to fight Canelo. We haven't even seen how good Crawford would look against someone like a Tim Tszyu. I would at least like to see Crawford fight a Tim Tszyu before fighting a Canelo, at least, right? We haven't seen how he would do against a Janabek Alam Connolly, let alone a Canelo Alvarez. So, Terence Crawford definitely, without doubt, should not fight Canelo Alvarez. He should fight Jermell at 154, Tim Tszyu, and then call it a day. I think even now he has a better case to retire and end his career perfect at 40-0 than risk getting knocked out by Canelo Alvarez. You guys tell me your thoughts in the comment section below, though. How do you think a Crawford versus Canelo fight would play out? I don't see Crawford having much of a shot. I think he would make it a very tough fight. I can guarantee you he would give a better shot than Jermell did, but I see him getting knocked out in like the 9th, 10th round after being slightly up on the cards. Canelo is just too big, man. He's too big. This guy is a big guy for 168. That's why he moved up to 175 and almost moved up to cruiserweight. He's a huge guy for the weight class, not in height, but in stature. And I give Canelo Alvarez credit. He's definitely back. I mean, he's always been high in the pound-for-pound list, even after the Bivol loss. But I feel this fight just proves that people were underestimating Canelo after that John Ryder performance. People were making too big of a deal out of it. This is still a very, very good fighter, and he proved it last night. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below, though. What do you think of the fight? What do you think of Canelo's performance? Tell me all that down below. Have a good one, guys. God bless. I'll see you guys later. Peace.